Hey, don't forget your brush!
Welcome back to part 2 of our Bluebell wood watercolour project. This is the part where we're going to be learning how to paint it. So you're going to need your paintbrushes, your watercolour paints, and you'll also notice that in this project I use something called Brusho. Brusho is a type of powder that you mix with water. You can get many different colours and you can buy this in lots of different art shops. If you've bought your kit from Artshed, you'll have some little pots with some powder in, and all you do is you mix it with water, but just be sure to check that you've got the right colour on a spare piece of paper before you put it on your real thing. Brusho acts a little bit differently to watercolour, and you'll notice that as we paint with it, often when it dries it has a kind of furry edge to it, which I really liked for this project. If you don't have Brusho, don't worry, you can mix normal watercolour paints and that's absolutely fine. So let's get started. So I've got my drawing and I'm ready to paint. I haven't outlined any of my drawing this time in Sharpie or fine liner because on this picture it's better if you do that at the end. So I'm just going to have a look at my little sketch that I did just to remind myself that the first thing I want to do is I want to paint with the sunshine. Now you can see in this picture here my sun is coming from here and it's coming down and it's hitting the sides of my trees and it's sort of dappled here. It's not so much here because this bit's going to be a bit more shaded. So I'm going to get on and paint the sunshine. So I've mixed up some yellow Brusho, so that's the powder that you mix with water. I've mixed up quite a lot so that I don't have to go mix up some new stuff halfway through. So I'm going to start with my sunny bit, which is over here in the corner. Now, the great thing about this picture is it can be really scruffy. And it kind of doesn't matter if you've painted over things by mistake. So that's all going to be nice and bright there because the sun is coming through those trees there. It's going to hit the side of this tree, just on the edge. So I'm going to bring some sunshine just down the edge of this tree here. Now you can see here I've accidentally dropped a little bit, so all I'm going to do is just scrub that in. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'm going to bring my sunshine right down the edge of that tree, down the edge there. It might hit the top of this branch a bit. Probably doesn't hit that one because that's in the shadow. Now these trees, it's going to hit the side and there's going to be bits of it in there. So again, I can scrub that in. And now that's another tree. So I'm going to go down the edge of my tree and scribble a bit in between my trees. So go down the edge of all your trees just with a bit of yellow. And then the gaps in between the trees, you can just put sort of patches. So already you can start to see like someone's turned the lights on. So this time we're going to have a look at the ground. We've done the sun hitting our trees, so we're going to go down to the ground. And this time I'm just literally going to do some sort of scribbly marks. Again, don't worry too much if you go over your people. Just sort of a few scribbly marks. Even across the path. This is all going to be the sun. You can go right across your path. Now don't cover up all the white. It's going to be nice to have some white bits. And when you get down here, you can just do a few and then we'll let it go all shady down here. So that's probably enough yellow. So you can let that dry. My yellow's quite dry now. It doesn't need to be completely dry for this because the next colour we're going to be using is green, and it doesn't matter too much if the green and the yellow mix a little bit. So going back to my, let's find that, my sketch, I'm going to put all the green in. Now you can see there's quite a lot in this picture. So I'm going to start up here with all the leaves and then come down and put some on the grass. But I'm going to be really careful not to paint on top of my bluebells because I want those to be the really lovely blue colour, so I don't want the green to hit those. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to start with my little leaves in the distance. So I'm just going to do little dabs. I've got quite a big brush here. This is my number 10. Now the great thing, again, as I was saying earlier about this picture, is that we don't need to be neat and tidy, because if you go for a walk out in the woods, everything's quite scruffy looking, isn't it? There's leaves everywhere and branches, and that's the sort of feel that we want for this picture. So do your little marks in the background first, so they're just little, occasionally you can make little dots. We're not going to think about individual leaf shapes because that would be millions and millions and millions, wouldn't it? So we're just trying to give the impression of leaves, the effect of leaves. And you can go over your tree trunks. Later on we're going to paint those in. So just keeping to little marks, and each time you make a mark, try and make it slightly different from the last one, maybe go in a different direction. So these are still my distant trees, and you'll see here the green starting to mix with the yellow, but that's okay. As you get nearer the bottom of the tree trunks, there's going to be less leaves, so you can stop there. And at the bottom, I'm just going to put in some sort of, almost as if there might be bushes at the bottom of the trees. Now I'm going to move down. I'm just going to put, I'm not going to paint it everywhere, just occasionally. I'm just going to put in some green bits. Still leaving the odd bit of white. So little patches. I want to leave some white bits to put my bluebell patches in, so I'm just going to leave some of those nice and white. Now you can see here I'm going to do some sort of scribbly marks. If you watch my paintbrush, occasionally I'm going to go kind of scribble around and occasionally go up and down, because as it gets nearer to me, it's going to be some more, you know, I can see more leaves and things, so I'm going to start seeing more marks. whereas in the distance you don't see quite so many. This time I can use the side of my brush and make some bigger marks. Once I get down to my bluebells, really don't want you to worry about being neat and tidy. The only thing I want you to worry about is try not to paint your actual bluebells. See if we can keep those white. So I'm going to go over everything else. You can see that now I'm really going to actually cover as much as possible in green. If you use the tip of your paintbrush, you'll find you can actually be quite detailed. And you can paint round and just leave your bluebells. So you can see I've managed to keep most of my bluebells nice and white, and don't worry if you've got a bit of green on them, that's okay, just as long as most of them have stayed white. So one more thing to do with the green, and that is we're going to do some really big marks now for the leaves of these big trees. So this time you can go crazy and do some real big marks like this. Not too many. That just tells us that these trees are much nearer us. Again, don't bring them down too low. They're just going to hang around these top branches. Okay. That's probably enough. So I'm going to let that dry completely this time, because the next colour we're going to do is purple, and I don't really want that to mix with the green and the yellow. My green and my yellow is nice and dry now, so I'm going to get on and I'm going to start painting all the tree trunks. So again, have a look at my sketch that I did just to remind myself. So I'm going to be using this sort of purpley colour here and putting in the trees. Now you can see I did my trees very purple, and trees aren't really that colour, but I kind of liked it. But of course, your own picture, you can do what you like, but my trees are probably going to turn a bit blue. So let's get going. So I've mixed up my purple here with Brusho powders, and again you can mix yours up with these or with Brusho powders. So I've still got my number 10 round brush, and with that purple I'm just going to start painting my whole trees. Now when you get to some green bit like there, just paint round it. You can use the side of your brush, and remember what I said earlier, this is quite a scruffy painting. You do not need to be neat and tidy with this painting. We're painting these tree trunks in layers, so this is kind of like the first layer, and then on top of that I'm going to be painting some darker colours. Now that was my mistake earlier. but that will just have to look like a patch of slightly different bark in my tree. But when I put darker colours on later on, that will be all right. I'm not worried about that mistake. And once I get down here, I just want to remember to make sure I don't paint my bluebells, because I want them to be a more of a bluey purple, which I've mixed up already. So I'm going to do all my trees in the background. So I've filled in all my tree trunks, and I've used this number 10 brush I said earlier, and what you notice, it's got a lovely tip to it, so I can still do the really thin tree trunks. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint a few branches just with the paint, with the tip of my, still keeping my number 10 brush, with the tip of my paintbrush. I'm just going to put in a few, well, you probably can't see those, very faint branches just near the top. In between the leaves. So those trees are going to have a few more branches coming off, aren't they? You'll notice that some of my paint is kind of mixing with each other, but actually in this picture I don't mind. Don't need too many, just a few. And then now I'm going to put a few patches in the background. This is going to kind of work as shadows, really. They're not, and also, if you've been to a bluebell wood, you'll see like a carpet of purple in the distance. So just in these white bits, I'm going to put in some of the, with the flag. I'm going to use the side of my brush now and put in some patches. So there's bits where I've left white deliberately for this bit so that I can put the purple there, so it looks like patches of bluebells. So in the distance we don't see each individual flower, we just see patches of colour. Maybe to just about here. And then we'll do something different with the bluebells as they come nearer to us. Now I'm also going to put some patches of purple in my path, because I'm going to put some brown on that later on. Still leaving little white bits. So we'll let that dry for a little bit, and then we'll move on to some of the darker greens. So what you'll notice is some of the purple and the yellow has started to mix and has actually made a kind of browny colour. Now that is Brusho that's done that. Now Watercolour will probably do something similar, but Brusho, you can kind of see the furry edges, and Brusho does that, and I quite like that for this type of painting. You're going to paint your bluebells now, and one thing that's really important is that your green is completely dry, because if it isn't, you'll find that they just blend together, the blue and the green, and it will be a bit disappointing because you'll lose a lot of that bluebell shape. I'm actually going to stay using my big brush because it's got such a nice tip to it that actually that's going to work really well, just painting my bluebells. So I've mixed up a slightly different bluey purple that you can mix up with your watercolour paints. And I'm going to start painting each little bluebell. Now this is obviously going to take a little bit longer, so you're going to have a lot more patience for this bit. You can leave little white bits as well, because later on we'll be going around these with a black pen to kind of bring out their shape, because we're going to lose a little bit of their shape with the painting. So I've painted my bluebells. These are the only bluebells that I'm going to actually do that look like bluebells. Round here I'm going to start doing little dots and things like that later. But later on, when we do the drawing on top of this painting, I can draw sort of some stems and some more leaves and things like that. So for now I'm going to use the same purple that I've used for my bluebells, and I'm going to put it in the shadow side of my tree. So that's the opposite side to where the sun was. So that's on this side. So again, I'm just going to do it in little strokes. Now this purple is still a little bit wet, so you'll see that it starts to just kind of blend together a bit and go furry around the edges. And again, because this is slightly scruffy and woody, I don't mind if it does that. Now when I get to there, I'm just going to put some stripes in that look a little bit like bark. Again, I'm still using the same brush. So I filled in my trees with the darker blue or darker purple, and as you can see, I left some of the lighter purple poking through, and as that dries, that's kind of going to blend together. What I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to leave my bluebell colour for a minute and get on with putting some dark green in, and then I'm going to come back and put some more bluebells in. So this time you can use your normal watercolours, and you've got a selection of greens, any of them will do. And we're going to start putting in some of the darker leaves. So get yourself a puddle of the green that you're going to use. I might start with this lighter one first. I'll test that one out. So at this point, you really do not need to worry about being neat. I know I keep saying this, but this project, you don't have to worry, because if you have a look at this, later on, we're going to use the pen to draw the leaves back in and the bluebells back in. So that's kind of how we're going to get our shapes back. So don't worry if you paint outside the lines of the things that you've drawn. So I'm going to paint in my leaves down here. So now I'm going to have to imagine lots of other bits of grass. I'm still using my big paintbrush because I like, yeah, and I'm going to start flicking. Those of you who've done some art shed projects before will be familiar with the flicking. So if you can see, I'll zoom in, I'm going to find, if you go from the bottom up, flick from the bottom, and wherever you want patches of grass and leaves, well, maybe grass I suppose, even in between all your bluebells that you've painted here. Just flick, do lots and lots of, and you can change greens now. You could have a darker green mixed in. Yeah, lots of different greens would be fine. For now, just keep to this lower bit. I've done my lower bit, and now as I move up, you're going to make your flicks smaller and maybe in different, maybe smaller patches. So now here, they're not going to be quite so big because they're going to move further away. So that's enough flicks for me for the moment. I'm not going any further than halfway up because by this point you don't tend to see individual bits, individual blades of grass, or you just see patches. So what I might do is just start to put in, with this same green colour, just a few. So you can see that those green patches carry on, but you don't see them quite so. You might probably see a few more flicks around here. So I'll put a few flicks there. You can always come back and put more things on in your painting. Oh, I obviously mixed a bit of blue into that green just then, which I don't really want, so I'll get rid of that. So here we go, there's a few more over here. And I think that's about as far as I'm happy to take it. While this green dries a bit, I'm going to get on and paint a few details like my people, and then I'm going to put some more bluebells in. Now the important thing when you come to paint these little details is that you need to paint little bits at a time and let them dry, because if you paint wet paint next to wet paint, it will all bleed together and turn into a mush. So I'm going to paint just their top half first. Now I fancied something quite bright in my picture, so I'm going to paint this jacket bright red. If I don't like it later on, I can always paint over it in another colour. But for now, I thought it'd be quite fun to have a brightly coloured jacket. So I will let that dry a little bit before I paint the trousers. I might give the child a blue coat. You can use your normal watercolour paints for this. And I've changed my brush to a number 4, so that's one of my little ones. Can probably get away with painting their heads, so I'm just going to use a brown. darker. I'm trying not to touch the blue because it will just all mix together if I do that. There we go. And also I can, while I'm here, I can paint the bottom of the foot just there. That's going to be dark. Well, the bottom of their shoe, I should say. There we go. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I paint the trousers. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to put in all my little bluebells that are hanging around here. And then just a few around here. So what I'm going to do is go back to my purple that I was doing the bluebells with. And I'm just going to start doing little dots where I think they may be. So here, just because now we don't need to worry about their exact shape. We just know that they're hanging around in these areas. So wherever we did little tufts of grass, we can imagine that those are the bottom of the bluebells. So you can put loads in, or you could put just a few in. It does depend how patient you are with painting. I can paint for ages and ages, but I know some people wonder how I do it. Now, if it starts like over here, it started to sort of mix, and so I need to be a little bit careful, and I'll probably keep an eye to see if I like that, and if not, I might stop and wait for it to dry a bit more. It's amazing how long watercolour paper stays damp for. I know these bits are dry, so. See, later on I'll put the stems and maybe some leaves and things with, might be some hanging around here on the edge of the path. Yeah, so they're beginning to mix a bit, but actually I don't really mind. I don't mind if they do that. I'll put some in over here. Watercolour's a bit funny because you never quite know what's going to happen, so you have to be kind of a bit open-minded and flexible. I'm going to stop there for now, and I'm going to see what those look like once they're dry. And I can probably paint the trousers now. So my picture's completely dry, and I've come back to have a good look at it. I realised I'd forgotten to paint the path in, so you probably haven't done your path yet. And then I thought I was videoing it, but then I obviously pressed the wrong button. But that's just a case of putting some brown in your path and remembering to leave some little gaps. And then I had another look at my sketch, and I realised actually I quite liked the blue on these trees here, which I didn't put on. If you remember, I was trying to work out whether I would leave them like this or not. And actually I decided I want a bit more depth. So you can see that this has a little bit more 3D in it. So I've mixed myself some purpley blue, which you can do from these colours here. and I'm going to put them on the shadow side of my tree, so that just on this sort of side here. I also wasn't that keen on my mistake because it was still poking through quite a lot, so I thought that if I put some darker paint on there, that will help. So I'm back with my number 10 brush, oh, different colour here, and I've mixed up a fair bit of this colour, and I'm going to put it on this side. It looks really dark when it goes on, but when it dries, it's not quite so dark. So you can choose to do this, but some of you may want your trees to be brown. So this would be a good way to put your brown on instead of blue. And again, leave, you see I'm going to leave gaps of the other colour, the purple underneath. And I'm not going to take it right to the edge. I'm not going to do any of this dark blue in the trees in the background because I want them to look further away. I'm just going to put a few flicks. I'm going to change my brush to a smaller one. I think this is a number 6 round. And I'm going to experiment a little bit, just down here, putting a few flicks of that blue in the grass. Just in a few areas, just because I've now given my picture a bit more depth with this colour, so I probably want to do a little bit of that in the grass. Now again, this is totally up to you how far. It can be very difficult sometimes to know how far to go with a picture, how far to take it. See, I actually quite like some of this darker colour, because once you put it on the paper, it doesn't look blue. It looks dark green. I just wanted this area down here to be a bit more shadowy, and that way it'll make that look even sunnier. Shadows are really important in pictures, and I think I might give these people some shadows because the light is coming from here, hitting the front of them, so that means behind them there'd be a shadow. That I've already accidentally put it on there. I'm going to go back to my purple, this purple colour here, which I still had in my pot, and I'm going to, just behind them on the path, attached to their feet, I'm going to imagine a shadow shape. So you come off the bottom of their feet and just paint at an angle a shadow. I might put a little bit more of this colour coming across my path. I might put a little bit on the side of their coats as well. A bit like the trees, the bits where you're not getting the light. Same purple colour. You can really put it wherever you want in your picture. just to indicate that that's a shadowy area. Now, of course, I could put shadows on all these trees and everything, but I think I'm kind of happy now. And I'm going to move on. Once this is dry, I'm going to move on and I'm going to put in my pen. And then that will bring in a lot more of the details. And then I can see how I feel about that. I can still paint more after the pen, but I think it's probably enough. My painting is completely dry now, and I have started doing lots of details with my black fine liner pen. I started by finding all my bluebells again, and I went round, I did that lemon with the skirt shape again. I found my leaves, and you'll probably also noticed I've done loads of scribbly grass shapes, and I've done them wherever I put my dark green. And occasionally in little bits where there's light green, I started doing some around the edge of my path, and I'll probably do them up till about this point here. You'll also notice I've put some marks in my tree trunk. Now, when you painted, we did it, if you remember, we did yellow, then we did purple, and then we did the darker blue. So you should have, if you left bits of colour, you should have lots of marks already, and that's a really good guide for your lines. So all you have to do is find a shape, so like there's one there, and just put a black line down the edge of it. So let's have a go on this tree here. So already, wherever my gaps are, don't outline them completely, just go follow one side of your marks. Any marks will do. And what you'll find is you start to get some nice barky marks on your trees. So have a go at putting all your lines in your picture. You can do as little or as many as you like. I really like this bit, so I tend to do quite a lot. So it depends what part of art you like, whether you like painting or drawing. When you get to the tops of your trees, you need to be a little bit careful. I made a mistake earlier on where I just did my line straight across here, and actually I realised I went right through what are leaves. You can see that there, which doesn't really matter. You won't see it later because I'm going to be putting lots of scribble marks on top, but it's probably best if you avoid. So here I've got to my leaves, there's a whole pile of leaves here, so I don't want to put a straight line right through them, so I'm just going to skip over them and find a bit what's purple again, and then I can put a line in there. So just be aware of that. So I've already outlined my people. So you can, I would suggest when you outline them, you do it really lightly and occasionally leave little lines. You don't want to sort of really smooth outline because they're sort of in the distance and there's going to be bits that you don't see. So just, you know, you can see like I haven't outlined that bit there. And again, the path as it goes into the distance, you can just put a few lines. So don't forget that further away, the flatter your lines and smaller your grass shapes, your scribbles will do. So you can see how small my scribbles are now. I'm only really going to put them in the green bits because they're the sort of more shadowy. So it's almost like I'm just writing a sentence of completely illegible writing, so you can't read any of it, but I'm going in a sort of line. I'm just going up and down, like lots and lots of shark fins popping out the ground. On my path, I've left lots of little marks again, and again, a bit like the tree, I'm just going to do a few little squiggles on there, just following the marks that I've already got. And then every now and then you could do a sort of little stony shape or a few little dots. That might be sort of some little rocks or again, keep everything quite scribbly. Don't press really hard with your pen. So I might come back and do a bit more, but before that I'm going to show you what I would do with the tops of my trees. So here I'm just going to do loads of scribbly marks, and this is quite fun. And you do not have to worry about leaf shapes. I am not making leaf shapes. I am kind of just doing scribbles. If you watch, you see I am just scribbling, but kind of keeping my scribbles sort of going in angles but round. You can see there, I'm not sort of going crisscross like this. All over the areas that I did green. And when you're in the background, if you see little bits, you could do little scribbles. Same thing, but just keep it smaller. And this is big again. Those big marks. So you can see it's just scribbles. What it's going to do is just give that messy effect of leaves. We don't want to be drawing each individual leaf. We'd be here forever. And I did say at the start this was a messy picture, and that's how I wanted it. Now I'm really leaning on this part of my picture, so what I might do is get a clean piece of paper and just put it there to protect my picture from getting dirty, because I spent all this time on it. I don't really want to get it mucky. So that's enough scribbling. I'm gonna go away and have a good look at my picture now. I might add a few more scribbles here. I think I'm gonna leave that, yeah, I'm gonna leave that background because I kind of want it to be far away and blurry. So I'm not gonna see too much detail there. And sometimes when you've got a picture like this where you've got quite a lot of busy, messy areas, you want to keep some areas just nice and calm. And then it's a nicer picture to look at. So enjoy your scribble session. And then the last thing to do will be to take your tape off. So here's my final picture. You might remember me saying when we were painting that I was going to let my picture dry completely. I was going to do all the scribbly bits on it, and then I was going to have another look to see if I wanted to put any more paint on. I actually decided I did. I decided I wanted to put a bit more green on round the path, a little bit there. I also decided to put some of that darker green into my leaves at the top in the same sort of splodges as I did with the light green. I also took some of the brown from the path and put some of it into the ground here. And the last thing I did was I used a black Sharpie, which is a little bit thicker than the fine liner we were using. And I put a line down the side of this tree. If you remember, this was the shadow side, and I just wanted a darker line, a slightly thicker line there. And I did it down the side of this tree as well. And I put a few bits into my bark. Also a couple of flicks of darker marks in my grass as well. So well done, and I really hope you enjoyed doing our Bluebell project. We'd love to see your pictures, so please share them with us on ArtShed's Facebook page. And also have a look at all our other projects because you might enjoy those too.